Welcome to another episode of Behind the Now. Today I get to chat with actress, dancer, and singer Bahar Beihaghi. Originally from Tehran, Bahar moved to the US after receiving her BS and graduated from the Actors Studio Drama School, where she received her MFA in acting. She is also one of the co-founders of Peydah, the first Iranian and Iranian-American theater company in New York City. Listen in to jump into Bahar's story, from acting and creativity to working within different countries and cultures. Hi, thank you so much for joining me today. I am so excited to talk with you.
Hi, thank you so much for having me. I'm also so excited for our conversation today.
Yeah, me too. So you are an actor, singer, and dancer based in New York. So first I'm going to ask you, I know you're originally from Iran, so talk about your journey getting to New York and also getting into this industry. I know you're working already as an actor in Iran, but just how did you get to where you are today?
So the story is that I was actually studying civil engineering back home, and I was taking acting classes, theater classes, and performing, going to rehearsals at the same time, kind of like having a major in civil engineering and minor in theater.
Mm-hmm.
And I always wanted to be an actress, but it was always like a conversation with my family in terms of like, oh, art is a hobby. Like, you don't do theater for life. It's a hobby. So anyways, I'm going to cut the story short because it went on for years and years until I finally gave in to their request of me following the family's pattern of being an engineer. And then when I graduated, that's when my parents kind of like made a deal with me that since you respected our choice, we're going to respect your choice, and you can study your master's in whatever field you want. And of course, it was going to be acting. And at the time, I was heavily studying French, and I wanted to go to Paris to study. And I actually got into a school. Everything was set. But then there was another conversation where my father specifically really saw that I would progress more as an artist, as a foreigner, let's say, as an immigrant artist in the US rather than in France. So that was a tough conversation. And then kind of like a last minute change, switching my brain to English, like kind of doing all the applications, which is a whole spiel. And then I came to New York 2016 to the school that I actually really, really, really wanted all these years. Like I was in love with method acting. I was in love always and still am. It's Al Pacino and his work. So getting into the school, like Actors Studio Drama School, was basically one of my dreams that it happened. And here I was, 2016, and yeah, the rest is history, I guess.
Wow, that is amazing. So first you plan to actually, after Iran, you plan to pursue it in France, it sounds like.
Yeah,
Oh, interesting. So you
exactly.
speak French fluently.
Well, I was very fluent back in the day, but since I moved to the US, I basically didn't have anybody to practice with. So I still understand very well. My speaking skills I'm kind of shy and make mistakes, but I have picked it up again and I'm
Yeah, I'm
practicing.
sure.
Yeah.
Okay, amazing. And what made your dad think that the States would be a better fit for you? Like, how does that work? How did he know that?
So very interesting. He had his whole group of friends who at the time, some of them immigrated to parts of Europe, some of them immigrated to the US.
Mhm.
And he talked to all of them. And the ones in Europe, they all said if we could go back, we would go to the States because we would have been basically more developed in our career. We would have achieved more success. So that was part of it. But yet still, the school that I got into, I had already friends in there. And they were French actors. I contacted them when this conversation came up. And after that, when I got into the school in New York, and they told me as like native French actors, they told me, if you have an opportunity to go to New York, you have to. Like,
Right.
Because no matter how much you speak French perfectly, you are always a foreigner here. The language barrier is always going to be there versus in the US, it is constructed upon immigrants. It is immigrants from all over the world they meet, and it is the place where the like your accent or your language is like, that's not gonna put you at like a lower priority than others.
Yeah.
And I think they're right.
Hmm.
I wouldn't have progress as much as I wanted, or the potential that I see here if I was there, versus if I basically achieve what I want here, there's always space for me to go back to
Right.
France if I wanted to.
Wow, that's amazing.
Yeah.
It's so exciting. So your English is perfect, and I just
Oh,
wonder,
thank
like,
you.
so you didn't grow up speaking English, I assume, right?
No,
Wow.
I used to go to English classes since I was 3.
Okay. So
But
classes
yeah,
are like,
yeah, classes. But I think part of it was that my mom, when I wanted to watch Disney cartoons, there were dubbed versions and the
okay.
original versions. She would never allow me to watch the dubbed versions. She was like, "You're gonna sit through it, and you will understand." And it was frustrating at the time, but I kind of like got a hold of it. To this day, I still thought it was under the sea, under the sea. But now, like, oh, it's under the sea. But it's, like I picked it up from Ariel and Cinderella and all of that,
Mhm.
And of course, listening to American pop at the time with like the
Oh,
limited access that I had to like watch their interviews, I would like
yeah.
imitate the way Avril Lavigne would talk all the time.
Oh
So
my gosh.
I think I owe
Amazing.
a bunch of it to her.
Incredible. That's really incredible. So you
Thank you.
primarily learned English from media, like TV and music.
Yeah, and of course classes too, but like
Yeah.
the ear that I developed came from like when I was very little because I was exposed to it, and I
Yeah, your
think
mom
someone
is
else. Yeah,
smart.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah. Definitely. So what are some differences in acting in Iran versus here? Like in terms of process, whatever you want to talk about with that, because I find that so interesting.
Well, so I cannot speak about acting on screen
Okay.
because what I did back home, I always did theater. I did
Okay.
only one short film, which was like a very zero budget indie style.
Mhm. Okay. Awesome.
So I did a lot of, let's say a lot of theater there.
Yeah.
And here I ended up doing, I mean, of course, in school it was like theater, but now I'm auditioning more for film and TV. So
Mhm.
sometimes I lose that ground level for comparing. But I feel like here versus there is always the conversation. I mean, not that the conversation doesn't happen between the directors and actors, it does. And actually, the actor collaborates a lot in creating something. But I feel like you would see maybe less realistic plays in Iran rather than realistic plays here.
Oh,
Like
okay.
Iran's drama is more affected by the European style.
Mm.
So it's like a lot of Lecoq and a lot of expressionism, like absurd,
Mm.
geometrical devising stuff, like experimental. Sure, we have real stuff, but then in the reality, when you're working on like real drama, what I felt was that the method acting at the time, at least what I was working on, wasn't as present, or the understanding of it
Yeah.
wasn't very accurate versus here. Still, here, there's a big misconception about method acting. Like, they think
Mhm.
we're crazy that we don't shower for like 8 months to get into character and stuff, like, which is
Yeah.
completely inaccurate. But
Right.
at least here, I feel like there is a deeper education about how a director and an actor should approach a
Mhm.
piece. I
Yeah.
think so. Um,
Interesting. So, like, yeah, so what you said, the conversation.
the
So
conversation,
yeah.
because the conversation happens. I mean, at least in the plays that I did, a lot of conversations happened. I did actually a lot of devising where I had to write my own stuff,
Oh.
make like doing the etudes and then
Mm.
writing it, which was great. Um, but I feel like maybe the discipline and time here, or that we have this many weeks for rehearsal, this week for tech, this is the performance. We didn't have that discipline. Things were more fluid. And
Okay,
for
so like
me, yeah.
the
And
structure.
for me, that I really like things to be structured,
Hmm.
I would get frustrated. But now I'm like, okay, we have 3 weeks to rehearse this, a week to tech, great. Like
Yeah,
I have a
your
vision.
style.
Yeah.
Interesting. And what about in terms of the stories being told? Is there a difference with that?
Um, yes. Well, I cannot speak about the past 5 years
Okay,
because
you're
I
right.
haven't been, yeah, I haven't been
Yeah.
back. And
Okay.
I'm like following my friends' works and they're doing groundbreaking work. I'm
Mm,
super happy for them. I'm proud. And I wish there was a way I could watch it. But if I want to like piggyback to when I was there and working on
okay.
stuff,
Mhm.
the thing that struck me most coming here was the industry here is actually, in ways, they are more open, but in ways, they're actually very close minded.
Mm,
Meaning, this, this platform of imagination of disbelief, it just does not exist in the eyes of the producers or the casting directors.
oh, I see
Mm,
what you're
You
saying.
see,
Yeah.
it's like, because we are entering the world of theater, it is an imaginary circumstance. And the audience is also, by buying that ticket and sitting in that
Mhm.
theater with you, is accepting that. It's
Right.
coming to watch you play.
Yeah.
And here is this idea of like, oh, you cannot do a Rhode Island girl. Oh, you cannot be Laura from Glass Menagerie. You're not a Southern girl. Or, oh, you don't look French. Oh, you don't look Greek.
Mm.
Versus back home, all the characters I did Mrs. Smith from this play, Jean-Luc something from another play. Like we already, because it was also like translated. So it's like
Yeah.
as soon as you are doing a translated work, you already know that we are entering another
Right.
world where this looking person
Yeah.
can be perceived as an English person.
That's so
We accept
interesting.
that.
Right.
And for me, like I've done Antigone, Ismene, Medea, like I've done a bunch of Greek stuff, a
Mhm.
bunch of um, like classic plays, or also like the more 20th century plays, the golden age I've done in Iran. Versus when it comes here, it's like, I'm
Yeah.
never going to be cast in a golden age.
That's
They
so
don't see it in me.
yeah.
I'm like, but I did it.
Yeah.
And they believed it. And I believed it because it's theater. We are creating a character. Why would it be so hard to see me like that?
Yeah. That's so interesting. I
It's
know
like the
I like
imagination, right? It's like
right,
the
right.
imagination.
Yeah, like hearing you talk about it, I'm like, yeah, I know exactly what you mean, Even
Mm,
like the difference sometime in class, you play these things that you wouldn't be cast in because for the experience of it. But like why
exactly.
not? Yeah, like I know what you mean completely with that. But
Yeah, exactly. So
yeah.
those stories are told. A lot of like great dramatic literature that is
Mhm.
translated, that is basically permitted to be translated, because we do have censorship on concepts a lot,
Right.
the
Yeah.
things that can be presented. So a big chunk of great work out there in the dramatic literature is not translated because of the concept they touch
Mm.
upon. But the ones that are translated, and of course the original playwrights who are working, they write very socially charged, politically charged um, plays, I would say. I'm not talking about films again because I
Yeah.
don't work in that era and like, um, but yeah, I think the big difference for me to like basically swallow it for the longest time was difficult
Mm.
because I was ready. Like when I came here, I was like, oh, I can, like, if I've done Medea, like, I can probably do a girl from the Bronx,
Right.
which I did in class, but it was because I would never be cast as one.
Yes, I know what you mean. Exactly.
But
It's
again,
fascinating, huh?
and the interesting part is like the more you are in the industry, you actually believe that.
Mm.
You know,
Yeah.
like back in 2018, 2017, when I was doing that role, I still was kind of like couldn't take it in. It's like hey, I can do this character if
Right.
she's from the Bronx or if she's from Rhode Island or from
Mhm.
Boston. I can tap into that dialect and everything. But when you try to play the rules of an industry that you want to succeed in, you kind of start believing it.
Yeah. And I think that's become like thinking about it as you're talking, I think everything you're saying has actually become more prevalent in very recent years where you can't play as much just because of looks or ethnicity or like whatever it is. I think
Hmm.
that's become heightened a lot because I've
Yeah.
noticed that too. Like I could, yeah, like the range in which people can see you as seems to have limited because, and like part of it is because we have I don't like maybe because we have people that can like are exactly that. Like there's so many people, right? And so
Exactly.
many types of people. So why not
Exactly.
have that just for that who like that person there, you know? But I see, yeah, like as an individual, it's get
That's true
you get
because like yeah,
frustrated.
I would see it like in the bowl of actors back home.
Right.
We have like we're in the same type of
Probably
look
yeah, it's
a
probably
little bit,
less.
let's
Yeah.
say. But so it's like then it's all about who can bring that character to life.
Yes, it's such
Not
a
about yeah, and it's all
perspective.
about imagination. That I can be a giraffe, and I could also be Mrs. Smith from the suburbs of London. Like it
Right.
just doesn't matter. It's playtime.
Yeah, exactly.
But
Oh
here, a
man.
lot of other things come into play.
Yeah. And you mentioned that like with casting directors and producers, yeah, they're not like they're like doing their job, which is to do exactly what you're saying, like find the people for each of these roles and like just put it together, right? They're not thinking like,
Yeah,
oh, she like having to see you differently, you know? But you're right.
exactly.
Yeah, that's so
Exactly.
fascinating. What about so I know that there's censorship in Iran. Is there a difference between is it looser or anything for theater versus film or you're not sure?
Well, again, I'm going to talk about the time that I was
Okay.
there
Yeah.
because
So it's
a
changed.
lot of things, yeah, a lot of things have changed
Okay.
massively, drastically in the
That's
past five
amazing.
years, which I'm hoping it's for the better.
Okay.
But the theater, sometimes, yes. In theater, it was opener because it's not going to be taped, it's not going to go on
Right.
TV, versus like TV was also a little more conservative than the cinema
Mhm.
because TV would go and be broadcasted into all social classes, into the tiniest villages, rather than cinema was like people would, so they would basically categorize what should be seen
Yeah.
on a like on a more general level rather
Right.
than people who buy and like more intellectual whatever you want to call it. But so there was a difference in then and between theater and film. As I was like growing up, I would see that the film was also getting more open and open versus
Oh.
now actually like I saw a couple of films from Iran and I was blown away. I was like, wow, you are doing that great. And it passed the censorship. Nice.
Oh,
And
I
the thing is that with theater and with film, when there is obvious censorships, they get creative in conveying
right,
the
I'm sure.
messages, which is could be sensual, could be sexual, could be political, could be social. They become super, super creative in
Yeah.
conveying those messages that you get blown away that wow, we are doing that.
That's
So
yeah.
I would say things have opened up a lot, a lot,
That's
a lot, a lot.
amazing. Yeah, and like what you're saying is so beautiful because that's true across all art. Like even for writing, right? If you suddenly limit or you can like something has to be really short, it makes people extra creative because how am I going like what is the best way to tell this in a short amount
Exactly.
of space? And that's same for acting. Sometimes you have limitations from like certain character traits of a character, sometimes a costume thing, sometimes the framing is up here, like natural
Exactly.
limitations, and it makes you figure it out, which is so
Exactly.
interesting. Yeah,
Exactly. And
that's a cool point.
I do remember in a theater piece where we were doing a love story from the epic book of Shahnameh. There
Mhm.
was this piece that we were doing, and there is a dance between the two lovers. It's me and my partner. And of course, that dance couldn't have been done with touch. So instead, what we did is we created this distance. He was on the other side of the stage. I was on the other side. And we choreographed the dance as if we were dancing completely hand to hand.
Beautiful.
But it was with like this voided space, but we were reacting at the same time. So it's like, if you look at it, you actually put your eyes, put them together. And it's like, oh, they are dancing together. Like all this emotions.
Yeah.
It's just that we had to do it that way to be able to put it up.
Right.
But also like that also brought up another social concept to it, that when you are longing for the loved ones after so long time and you're still dancing to the ghost of it, you know, like it just adds more meaning to it.
Yeah, definitely.
In reality, it's like we're just dealing with censorship.
Right.
But, you know.
No, but that's beautiful. Seriously, because it does take on new meaning. And like, I'm sure some stuff you don't even, like you didn't necessarily have the intention when creating it or planning it, but like, you know what I mean? It took on a new meaning that other people are gathering from it, you know? Like sometimes people bring up a conversation after, like, I love how you did this. And sometimes you're thinking that wasn't a deliberate choice, actually.
Yeah.
That's
Glad you
amazing.
picked that up.
Yeah, no, I love stuff like that. So what's your background in dance? Because I know you're also a dancer.
So I always thought that if I didn't become an actor, I would have become a dancer. And it's because like I adore moving. I adore dancing. But for me, so I was always like dancing on my own. And then I remember I went through a phase in high school that I started breakdancing.
Oh,
And
that's amazing.
and there were not many, actually there were no classes at the time. And I found this dude who is a great breakdancer, and he was holding breakdancing classes in his basement. So I would go with another my friend and we would like do stuff until I actually hurt my wrist. To this day it hurts and I had to stop. But then I tried to find other forms, and I basically picked up contemporary dance, modern dance. And I took 2 workshops in Paris, and that also opened a lot of doors, because with the great thing about contemporary dance was, as my teacher said, is like there is no limitation of how you look, what your measurements are, if you can do a beautiful split or not. It's about what the story you want to convey with your body and your relationship to the gravity, to the floor, the qualities of movement, the direction. So it's like, and that opened a lot for me because that also conveyed itself a lot into acting for me.
Right.
And then I engaged in a lot of physical theater. I studied physical theater in Iran, and we put up a bunch of shows that was just like physical theater, like no dialogue. It was just stories through bodies. And that also amazes me to this day. Like I really, really love it. And sometimes I feel like New York, with this big diversity, like you don't necessarily see much of it here.
Interesting.
Which is interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then here I picked up ballroom when I was in school. It was amazing. I danced ballroom for 2 years, and also flamenco. And flamenco is also like one of the things that I adored since I was a kid. I was like watching them. I was like, I want to stub my feet like that.
Yeah. Oh,
Yeah.
that's so cool. I've always wanted to do ballroom. That's something I haven't.
Ballroom is amazing.
Yeah.
It's amazing. You would think like, oh, they're just like going in circles. No. It's like
sure
the
not.
feet work. The feet work is just stunning. But yeah, but the pandemic obviously put a pause on a lot of stuff.
Right. Well, civil engineering, that's no joke. So right now you are auditioning, you brought up. What is your process like when you get an audition? If you can speak to, like, is there any kind of pattern, the way, you know, like what's your process? You get it, you look at the breakdown, read the script. Is there any pattern?
So I would be lucky if I get a script, because then I can read the script and see the scene that they have pulled out for me to do, where it comes from. But sometimes they just give you the 3-page and you're like, oh, okay, what happened before this? God knows. what am I referring to in this
Right.
line? God knows. So you just have to make choices based on the breakdown and the description they send
Yeah.
you. So normally what I do is I read the description twice, but then I try to like
Mhm.
throw it away because sometimes the description
Yeah.
actually is a big trap for you to try to
Right.
act that emotion or act that trait
Yeah.
without actually
Yeah. Or
finding it
even like
yourself.
the idea of
The idea that you
yes,
play the
yes.
idea or actually grounding
Right,
yourself
right.
in it. So I would like try to like
Yeah.
not think about it, read, and I always try to like read from the first word that is printed until the last word, even if they have crossed out
Mhm.
things. I
Yeah, even
read
if it's crossed
everything.
out.
Yeah, I read things to make sure if I can get more information, basically. And
Right.
one of the things I do is, of course, I ask the questions: who, where, how, what, when. But then I also look at the punctuation, because punctuation, especially in TV and film, is like very important. So it's like if it's a question mark, is it an upward inflection or downward? Or like if it's a period, am I being very frank about what I'm saying? If it's a comma, how
Mhm.
much of a pause? So it's like I feel like the punctuation gives a good sense of the breathing pattern sometimes. And then I
Mm.
read it and I try to find, basically I try to like do the puzzle. So it's like I look at it, I try to answer the questions. What is my need? What is my obstacle? What is my tactic to overcome that obstacle? And then I look for what the prior circumstance is, if I know it, if I don't,
Mhm.
based on the description, what it is. And then what is the arc? And what can I
Mhm.
physically do behavior wise
Yeah.
to like ground myself and make sure that I look like a live human being rather than I'm just reading the lines. And then the other thing is I try to find personal stuff in it, something
Yeah.
that that ignites my own craft,
Mhm.
basically. If it's like, oh, if
Yeah.
it's like talks about the father, with the relationship of the father, like, can I relate to my own relationship with my father, or can I replace this person with the father
Mhm.
mentioned so that it can induce the same result that I want? So it's like you just
Yeah.
like basically sit down and do the method a little bit.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes, and everything so yeah, everything just has to make sense to you, you know? Like, every
Exactly,
detail in
exactly.
there, you know exactly what it's about, you know? Like,
Yeah,
who
if the
that
person is
is to
crying
you.
over a raccoon, like I'm not gonna cry over a dead raccoon, but maybe if it's a dead golden retriever, yes, I will cry over it. It's like you just find something that makes sense for you.
Yeah,
I mean, no, I don't want any golden
yeah,
retriever to die.
and it sounds like also, you start very objectively, like, with the detective work and just filling in the facts, like, what we know,
Yeah,
and then it makes this transition of, like, okay, it's not, like, just on objective anymore, it's subjective, and then ultimately you have to throw it away, like, when you actually do it.
exactly. And if the show is already being produced, it's always good to like go
Right.
watch an episode or two to see the
Yeah,
tone, to
definitely.
see what's going on. Because sometimes I like pick up a side and I do it like realistically, and then I look at the show and the show is very
Right, completely different.
exhibitionistic. And I'm like, oh, so I gotta
Yeah,
kind of like tap into the bad acting then, because that's the style.
yeah,
So it's like it's always important to
yeah,
see, or like they're speaking fast. Like I have to pick up my cues. I need less pause.
right,
It's
the
like
pacing,
yeah, the
definitely.
pacing. And the pacing is
Yeah.
something that I struggle a lot because I like to milk my words and take it in. And it's always like, no, chop, chop, move, move.
That's also, something like that might even be language-based too, because certain languages, the words there is just, like, a slower pace to it, like, not even just language, but accents as well, like, American accents, some are much more, like, chop, 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 and some are more
Exactly.
like you take your time, right? So interesting.
Exactly.
Yeah, so that could be from Farsi maybe is Farsi, it tends to be I know Farsi is
Well,
very poetic and, like,
it's
beautiful,
very
right?
poetic and it's very musical because so sometimes that
Mm,
melody carries itself into my English. And it's not that I'm
mm,
saying the words wrong. It just sounds funny because I'm I'm like bringing the melody and the musicality of Farsi into saying a line, and then I'm like, oh, this sounds so weird. I should just like put the emphasis here and then bring my tone down here, and then boom, that's how an American would say it, versus me, I would be like la 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 la. But that's no, that's the
Yeah,
Iranian
that's
way. Yeah.
yeah. That's definitely applicable to all actors, like to have an awareness of that. But it's just interesting with like your like a background of Farsi, for instance, because I'm sure you see it differently. Like your natural inclinations are going to be a little different, you know?
It's
But there's
always
those
more
differences
upward.
even
Yeah,
within the yeah,
exactly.
it's so
And you
interesting.
know what another funny thing is that besides the fact that I love drama and I feel like I thrive more in drama, I feel like nowadays with the comedy scripts that I get, I just sometimes feel like I'm not funny in English. It's something
Mm,
about the language, it's something about like the words you hit, the dry humor, the way you have to
yeah.
say things. And it's just like, damn, I cannot be funny in English because
No, don't
it's
get that in
literally
your
the
head.
language barrier
That's
sometimes. I
yeah.
sometimes
I
it's
mean,
like
that's fascinating, but yeah, that's
it's just,
interesting.
yeah, it's
I
like
don't know. Like
it's one of those things.
sometimes, like I was reading, like yesterday, a couple of friends and I read the pilot for Friends, for instance,
Oh.
and it was just very interesting to like see it just to like, because we tried to like completely, I mean, obviously not, you can't completely, but we tried to just like objectively look at it as a script, as if the show didn't exist yet.
Mhm.
And it's like things, so much of that was so funny, but like in the final product, that didn't necessarily, like, I was thinking, like, from the script alone, you wouldn't have necessarily even, like, there's definitely jokes in there and everything, but like just like the depth of it,
Mhm.
it's just very different just on a page, which is
Yeah.
fascinating, you know? And it made me think too, like when we get these scripts for auditions too, it's like there's really so much you can do with everything. And
Exactly.
it's like, right,
Exactly.
like but like I've had that feeling too. Like it doesn't make me comedy is so tricky. Like comedy is something you
It's
can't
tricky.
articulate. You can't really necessarily know why something's funny. There's like technical details and technical things like a callback or this was a misguide or misleading thing or whatever it is, but like it's not like ever explaining the core of why something is funny, you know?
Exactly,
So it's like it's
exactly.
fascinating. Yeah.
So I have also like, I'm like, okay, maybe I just cannot be necessarily a comic actor, and that's fine. I love drama more, but
Yeah, I mean that
it
is fine, but also maybe it's just yeah, maybe it'll like hit you on like it'll hit you and you'll be like, "Oh, that's it," you know?
exactly. Yeah, I
Maybe
feel
it's
like it's
just
a
like
lot of
'cause I have those
technicality.
too. Yeah, maybe.
Yeah.
Fascinating. Um, I love talking about this stuff because I'm like, yeah, I feel like
I feel
that
like
too. You
that
know?
too. Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
Definitely. And I sometimes
Um,
feel like when you get, when you get like the co-star sides when it's just like two
yeah.
lines and you're like, what do you want me to do with this? Like, but then thinking about it, I love working with two of my friends when I get sides like that because their brains just bloom and flourish into magnificent ideas. And like, you should do this.
yeah.
I'm like, how did you even think of this? It's just a freaking line saying, how are you? And you bring all this
Yeah.
stress or sadness or anger to it all of a sudden
Right.
that they all fit because there's no
Yeah.
description on the character. You can basically do whatever you want. So those are also fun.
Right. Yeah, they are. They are. And like yeah, for those it's like find out first what's the purpose of this line in this role at all in the larger scheme of the story, you know? Like how does this serve the protagonist? Is it an obstacle for the protagonist? Is it like someone helping them? Like whatever it is, and then you can go and play with all these different ways that serve that overall story, right? Like someone could
Exactly.
be sick and say that and it would be an obstacle because they're like sneezing everywhere, like or it could be they're high. Like it could be, you know what I mean? And like then it
Yeah,
like blows up. It's funny though, because sometimes at
exactly.
first, and it's like you read it like in your head, you're like, okay, they're just, yeah, exactly. Like, how are you? Like,
Yeah. How
but
are you?
it is infinite. It's cool. Yeah, and I think also on the other end of things, I think they don't necessarily, I mean, I shouldn't say this or like speak for them, or like everyone's different too, obviously. But I don't know if they always necessarily know how, you know what I mean? That's why they're bringing in different people to try and like see. So there's like,
Yeah.
yeah, that was wrong for sure, you know? Like there's nothing
Yeah.
that's definitely wrong.
Yeah. Sometimes they don't even
Yeah.
know what they want when they're like asking for all ethnicities, everybody can submit. It's good because then you're like, okay, great. Like I get a playground to play. But it's also like, who am I competing with? Or what are you exactly looking for?
Yeah.
Like, so it's a little tricky.
Yeah, yeah, and there's all time. Yeah, I know you know too. Like, there's so
Yeah.
many. Like, there's like that, and then there's also ones where it is like very specific, right? And it's
Mhm.
like,
Yeah.
yeah, it's like
Very
such a
specific.
spectrum. That's why it's really good to experience working in like so many different ways because there is like that. There's just so many different. Because it all exists. Like it's all out there. You know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Definitely. Definitely.
All right. Yeah. Okay. I'm gonna ask you just a few. Right.
Okay, great.
What is something that you wish you could tell your younger self, if anything?
I'm going to say it to my 12-year-old version of me.
Okay. Very specific. Yeah.
Maybe it sounds superficial, but I'm happy that you were not born with straight blonde hair and blonde thin eyebrows and a small nose. I'm glad that you were not born like that.
Yeah.
No, because I remember at the time I was like, I found my notebook once that as a 12-year-old, I wrote somewhere, I wish I was
Mm,
born blonde with thin eyebrows, blonde hair, like everything straight, like basically I wanted to look like Avril Lavigne, for example. And now I'm like, no,
yeah.
no. I'm glad you were
Yeah.
not born like
Okay.
that. Own it.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
No, that's very powerful. I mean, I think all girls need to hear that actually to some, like, you know, to some extent for something. There's always, yeah. No, I think that's
Yeah.
beautiful. And I think that's why it's so important that you're working and exactly, you know? So people
Yeah.
see all like everyone, you know? It's
Exactly.
beautiful and
Exactly.
yeah, not just yeah. Oh, okay, amazing. If you were an athlete, what sport would you play?
Ooh,
Well, I know you're a
swimming.
dancer. Yeah.
Swimming, because I was a swimmer. So yeah, swimming.
Oh,
Yeah, definitely.
okay,
I was
interesting. Did you
yeah.
have a favorite stroke? Is that was yeah? Did you have a favorite
Butterfly.
stroke or
Butterfly. Yes.
mm,
Yeah.
wow, that's hard. A
It's
lot of
a
stroke.
hard one, but it's like it felt like an achievement the day I learned it and I actually like performed it. I was like, yes, this is exactly what I wanted to
Amazing.
do. Um, I
Okay,
wish in New
cool.
York we had more pools, then I would just like go swimming. So it's like every time I
Mm.
travel to California, then I'm like, why do you have pools everywhere? Like, why don't we have pools?
Wow. So did you do swimming races? Did you race
Yeah,
or
yeah.
compete?
I swam
Wow.
since I was 4, basically. And I like
Mhm.
competed. I competed in kindergarten, elementary school, like all
Oh
those
my
years I
God.
did. And then I kind of stopped in high school because I learned
Okay.
everything and I really wanted to be a lifeguard. I still do. At the time, I was super skinny and petite, and they literally didn't. And I was way below the age, and they were like, "You cannot save yourself. You're gonna get drowned yourself. So
Oh
you
no.
cannot get to take the test." Like, okay. So
Oh
still
wow.
it's like one of my undone
I,
projects. I really want to be a lifeguard.
yeah. Oh my God, so cute. You should definitely have like if you don't have though on just as a skill you can do because that's you never know. That's
Yeah,
cool.
yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
I mean,
like on your resume. Yeah.
Yeah, I feel like in a parallel world, I was always a mermaid. That's
Mm.
definitely, it's like one of my,
Yeah.
as a kid, I
Your
was
spirit.
constantly in water. I was
Yeah.
like constantly in water. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, that's amazing. I also actually love water. I was similar growing up,
Yeah.
but not like swimming or anything. Just like a connection to water, like the
Yeah. The
ocean,
water. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Cool. What is your horoscope sign, and does that mean anything to you?
Oh, I'm an Aries. I know nothing about zodiac signs, to be honest with you. And I
Okay.
see that some
Yeah.
people know a lot about it. They match
I
people
know.
like that. And I'm like, how does that
Yeah.
work? Um, I sincerely don't know how I connect with
Yeah,
the
yeah.
Aries. Do you know anything about it? Because I would probably say, oh, yeah, that's me or that's
Um,
not me. But
yeah, no, I have friends also like what you're saying. Like I just know like some people that are very like, "Oh, you're this? Oh, I knew it. You're so
uh,
that," you know?
yeah, exactly. I'm like,
So yeah, yeah. I don't
yeah.
know like details about all of them though at all. Like I can't tell you, "Oh, Aries, this is what an
Yeah.
Aries
I
does."
think the one thing that everybody can detect are the Scorpios. You're a
Hmm.
Scorpio. Those, yeah. And that's the only thing I have picked up is because I see patterns. But
That's
yeah,
funny, interesting. Yeah, I actually now that you say that, I'm like, yeah, I do like I think it's just content where you see people talking about Scorpio specifically, you know?
yeah,
And I
because
don't
we're
know
just,
why.
yeah, they're just,
Yeah.
yeah.
And then what is something you do to be the now, to stay present? Or however you interpret that. Like if there's something you consciously do, or if it's like I feel present when I do this and that's it, you know?
Oh, interesting.
What are some things that you do when you don't feel present to become present?
I would just like start baking a cake or muffins or something. And that just, it's kind of like, remember Izzy from Grey's Anatomy? Like when she was just
Mhm.
like baking for days. I had moments like that of just baking.
Oh, I
Uh,
see. Yeah.
yeah.
That's a great answer.
Yeah. I mean, but that's
Yeah,
not like
definitely,
something that
because
I
it
can always do, you know? Like sometimes to get
right.
present, it's
No, but
just
that's
listening to
exactly
music. Yeah.
mhm.
Um,
Yeah.
sometimes it's just, if I am close to the water, it's just like staring out into the water. And
Mhm.
sometimes, as weird as it sounds, is take the subway, go to Times Square, and just stand and the hustle and bustle and look at the monitors because it kind of like
Yeah.
taps me into like you're in New York. This is present time.
Right.
So it's like different. It's like not
That's
always doing the same
amazing.
thing. Yeah.
Yeah, no, that's amazing. I love that. Thank you so much for doing this. I really
Of
appreciate it. I
course,
love
of
talking to
course.
you. So
I
fun.
enjoyed talking to you. Thank you so much for having me on this. I'm so excited
Yes,
to
of course.
have this conversation with you. It was just great. So fun.
Yes. Cool. Also, one more thing, where can our listeners find you? Like, if they wanna look up your work, where should they go?
Um, my Instagram, my website. I don't have Twitter. Trying to stay away from it.
Okay.
And well, IMDb not really. Like it doesn't get like
Right, right.
as updated regularly. But like yeah, Instagram and my website would be the ones.
Okay, perfect. Yay, thank you
Perfect.
so much. I appreciate
Thank you
it. You're
so much,
amazing. I'm
Mena.
excited to see what you did with your work.
Thank you so much. Thank you. Thank you. I hope you enjoy the sun. We are experiencing very cold weather in New York. And I hope you enjoy the warmth in California.